Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us. I'm Judy Simpson. As always, on the fourth Wednesday of the month, I'm joined by Mark LaBarr, conservation biologist for Audubon, Vermont. And today, Mark's going to be talking about some of the birds he saw on a recent trip to Maine. Welcome back.
Always great to be here, Judy.
So tell me a little bit about Maine. Where did you go?
Well, you know, I'm really fortunate that I've done a lot of traveling, and I always try to see as many birds as I can. I have some friends that know some folks that own an island off the coast of Maine in Machias Bay, and it's an island called Yellowhead Island, and it gets its name from that big cliff face there, and it's not very big, maybe 10 acres. It's got this little cabin on it that we can stay in, plus some tent platforms, and we used to go around in May when we used to get some great warbler pushes, during migration, but in recent years I've been going out in June, so things are much quieter, but it's still a great opportunity to just check out different birds in a different place.
It looks like it was pretty far out there.
Yeah, you have to get there by boat, obviously, and it's Maine, it's coastal waters, so it can be really this last time I went out, it was raining and pouring, and the boat was pitching, so it takes a little bit to get out there, but that's what kind of makes it special. No electricity or anything like that.
Right. So what did you see?
So, one of the birds that we hear out there and see, which is a bird that I rarely come across at the Audubon, is the Swainson's thrush. And what's really cool about a Swainson's thrush is there in Maine, that Swainson's thrush is right down at sea level. The coniferous forest that you saw on that island has, the habitat that bird enjoys. Here in Vermont, we find the Swainson's thrush much higher up on the, basically, 1,000, 2,000 feet up. So they're kind of a mid-mountain species, or even at the top of some of our peaks. So they have to kind of move up laterally. So it's great to hear them, see them. They're a bird that, comes in, and you can just sit there on the walkway and you can watch the birds fly around and you hear them in the woods. Another one is here's the Swainson's thrush. It's got that, kind of medium speckling. When we think of thrushes, you got your wood thrush, lots of speckles on the breast. You got your veeries, few speckles on the breast, and again, this is kind of a medium guy. He's got also that eye ring. This is another bird. This is my backyard, but it's a picture of another bird that we saw on the island. This is a black-throated green warbler. Now, this is one that I banded, but this is another bird that tends to like coniferous forests or some coniferous aspect, and it's a bird that, again, we'd get up in the morning and you'd go and sit on this little boardwalk and you'd drink your coffee, and these birds would be flitting around, and the black-throated greens were singing. It was June, so your veeries are singing. We did hear these guys too. This is a really nice-looking male yellow-rumped warbler. You can kind of see that yellow rump. We've talked about yellow rumps all the time, butterbutts. They're a big, bird that we find in migration here in Vermont. We do see them at the Audubon, but we had one time where I was laying in a hammock and watching the adult feed the young, and so it was just really cool. Not a lot of birds out there. Song sparrow maybe is another one, which kind of made it fun because you didn't spend all your time trying to figure out what this was and that was, and you could just focus on watching the birds.
Well, what about birds in the water around the island?
So, it is an island. It is the coast of Maine. So there's birds there that are taking advantage of that colder water, and we're far enough enough down east that we were able to see razorbills. Now this is an alicid, so it's in with guillemot puffins, things like that, auks that are, or auklets, I should say. And this guy has that big heavy-duty bill, that nice eye line. We would see them floating in the water. We took a boat ride out to one of the even further out remoter islands, and we saw a lot of small flocks of them and them hanging out. Another bird that's pretty common is the pigeon guillemot. Again, this is a bird, these are diving birds that go underneath the water for fish, and so this is a great one. They have those, you can kind of see it there, really bright orange feet. So when you see them sitting up on the shoreline or up on a rocky ledge, those orange feet stick out. And of course, the bird you're in Maine, the bird that everybody goes to see, one of the things that Audubon is known for, as far as the return of the Atlantic puffin. And this is a picture that I took. I tell you, this picture, we were going up and down in the boat. There's probably 40 pictures, and that was the only one that came out. I got the bird half in, half out, but trying to take a picture in the rolling waters of Maine. But this was a great find because we were kind of hoping we would see one, and we are on our way back in, and we came across one. So it was great to be able to see that as well.
Well, you must have seen some gulls.
Yeah, gulls, you're on the coast. It's funny because when I was in Hawaii, and we talked about that, instead of gulls you had chickens, okay? But we're on the Maine coast, so we're talking gulls. And of course, probably the one that we saw the most was the herring gull. A big gull.
Yep, very typical.
Yep, we have them here on Lake Champlain. That bright red dot on the bill there, that's what the youngsters aim at when they're being fed. So a great bird, really common, sitting on all the rocks. Another big bird, another big gull that we saw was the great blackback gull. Kind of like a herring gull, except for it's a little bit larger, and you can see it has that really distinct black back that kind of, you can see it when it's flying. You can see that black back and identify it from a distance. And then we were, got kind of lucky enough as we were motoring out to these smaller islands, we had a laughing gull come by. And just a sharp-looking gull. Sometimes gulls don't get as much credit as they deserve. People kind of take them for granted, even though any picture that you have of the coastline or even of the lake usually has a little gull in it.
Right.
But they, in their own right, are really nice-looking birds, and do a lot of cleanup as well. They're keep the lake clean and the shore, certainly the coast clean. Yeah,
well, we have seabirds here in Vermont.
We do, and of course the one that I'm very fond of, which is our common tern. This is a bird that is a state endangered species. Here you can see a common tern adult sitting on one of our buoys that we use to protect the Audubon Islands, which are sanctuaries out there. The terns like to roost on them. It's always fun cleaning them at the end of the year, as you can see. But the common tern is, as I said, is state endangered. We've talked about this one before. I go out once a week. We partner and are funded with the Vermont Fish and Wildlife Department that provide us with the monies in order to do the surveys. And the tern population has done really well. It's been pretty stable. This is up on the Audubon Papasquash Island Sanctuary. And you can see terns out there incubating, and those wooden things are chick shelters. Here's a tern, common tern, that's settling back down on its eggs. They usually lay 3 eggs, and we put those chick shelters next to the nest. So when the chicks hatch, they have a place to go to if the weather's bad or if there's a predator in the area. We mark all the nests so we know how many chicks, how many nests are laid, and try to get a population estimate. So we're doing really good this year so far.
It's been a good year for the terns.
Yeah, we've got about 50 chicks off so far, and we've got a whole second wave of nesting that's happening.
Oh,
so
no kidding.
yeah, so we're hopeful that we're going to get a good reproductive year with those birds this year.
Are there other kinds of terns or gulls on the lake?
Well, a big one that's out there now, and I say big one because it is a bigger tern, is the Caspian tern. Now, the Caspian Tern has some classic tern features, those pointy wings, but as you can see, it differs from the common tern in that it has that really bright orange bill. Now, there's a nesting colony of Caspian terns out on the Four Brothers Island, and they come in and can be regularly seen in Shelburne Bay, and we see them as far north as North Hero. They often show up. The last time I was out on the Tern Islands, we had a couple that were floating around. Their populations have been growing, but a great big tern to watch, and folks get a chance to see them as, they're relative newcomers to Lake Champlain.
Interesting.
And then, of course, our gull, if you want to call it that. We do have herring gulls and blackback gulls, but the gull that you most likely see on Lake Champlain is the ring-billed gull. And it gets its name from that ring on its bill, as one would think. And this is the bird that you find everywhere from out on the islands, out in the water, to Al's French fries. They will. They are very advantageous eaters, and so they visit dumps, hay fields, anything that they can get food with. But they're the gull that we find most common that nests out on Lake Champlain.
All right, well, I think we have time for a couple of questions. We have one from Robin Orkut, and Robin says, corresponded with us before, talking about bird songs. I thought a brief segment on Across the Fence on birds heard but not seen at dusk might be interesting. Now I'm trying to identify something that I hear every evening and have in summers past. Very musical, not a hermit or a wood thrush, sort of a two-note phrase, sounds a bit like wee-o, repeated 4 or 5 times, each time in a lower pitch.
Yeah, so this is the lullaby bird. This is a bird that my daughter, when we would camp out when I was banding, would sing at dusk, and she called it her lullaby bird because of that descending, spiraling veer, 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 veer. So this is the veery. And we saw that Swainson's thrush earlier in the program. And you can see that this is definitely a thrush, but again, those speckles on the breast are much less than what we saw in that Swainson's, and even fewer than you would find with hermit thrushes as well. So a great bird. They do right at dusk. They sing in the morning, but right at dusk they'll start that downwards fluty sound. It's basically light intensity. So that same light intensity in the morning is kind of replicated at dusk. And because of that, some birds will begin to sing at dusk. Some birds, even without light, you get white-throated sparrows will sometimes sing their Poor Will Peabody, Peabody, Peabody in the middle of the night. But the veeries are great to listen to right at dusk as things kind of settle down.
And we have one more question from Bob and Sue Matson. They always keep a bird feeder up year-round.
Yep.
But lately, the gray squirrels and red squirrels have been constantly raiding the feeder, and they even tried putting some seed down on the ground for them, but that didn't work. Finally, it was just too much, and they took the feeder down. But they're concerned now, what about the birds that are used to visiting the feeder in the summertime?
Well, and I think she mentioned there's plenty of food out there for birds during the summertime, and even during the winter months. If your feeder runs dry or if you're away on vacation, there's still plenty of food for them to take advantage of in the winter too. They're pretty, chickadees and everybody are pretty well designed for that. That said, feeding is a great thing for birds, so they certainly take advantage of it. And my recommendation to her was to just take the feeder down.
Yeah.
There's plenty of food, and more and more. I was talking to you a little bit about this before the program. We're having these bear-human interactions, and bird feeders, especially in the summer months, can be really problematic with that.
Right.
Folks do try to feed, and so the state, as always, recommends that they have the time period. You focus your bird feeding in the winter time as much as you can.
While the bears are hibernating.
While the bears are hibernating, and maybe switch over to hummingbird feeders or things of that nature. Although I say hummingbird feeders, but my office mate Kim has had bears take her bird feeders down. So I guess a nice sweet drink. Everybody likes a nice sweet drink, and bears are no exception.
Right, and I feel their pain of the Madsons because we had a feeder up this winter, and it was great until the squirrels discovered
Yes.
it. And then there were so many squirrels it was driving my dogs frantic, so I had to take it down.
Yeah, yeah. And sometimes that's it's great. Bird feeding's great. It's great to see the birds. It's great to help them out, but sometimes that is the only thing you can do. I joke, my daughter and I, we had set up a feeder, and we called it the game of squirrels because it was out on a wire, and I kept trying all these different strategies to kind of block the squirrels from getting out to the feeder. And we lost.
Tenacious,
we lost the game. We had to move the feeder to a different location and a little bit closer to the house, and so they seemed to leave it alone after that.
All right. Well, if you have a bird-related question, please contact Mark. You can write to him at Audubon, Vermont, 255 Sherman Hollow Road in Huntington. The zip code is 05462. You can also email your questions to Mark at mlabarr@audubon.org. Thanks a lot for joining us.
Always fun.
That's our program today. I'm Judy Simpson. I'll see you again next time on Across the Fence.